When we look at, other projects that have switched licenses like Elastic, there was quickly a fork of that with OpenSearch. Similarly, and we'll talk a little bit about Hashi. There's already talk about a Hashi split and fork as well. I've seen some work on that early on, and we've seen that happen, right? Why not with Mongo?
Just the thought that doing all of this with the need to actually start thinking about what are the 10 companies we would start having to pay license fees to buy Microsoft Windows licenses or Windows Server, I don't know, 2003 or if we use a database like MongoDB, whether we are legal to do so or not. I mean, with open source, these questions are quite clear. It's in the license, it's established, you understand what you're doing, and if there's a question, there will be someone who can answer. With the SSPL license, it's completely unclear what is allowed and what is not allowed. It's basically a legal text which very broadly explains that if you have anything to do with MongoDB and the service associated with it, then you may need to pay a license. Our whole point at FerretDB, or my personal opinion, or maybe both, is that you are free to say that open source is not good for you. You are free to publish your software with a proprietary license. You are free to do whatever you need to do as a company to achieve your goals. Just try not to reach back and redefine things according to your own needs, according to what you want to see as an individual or as a business. It's open source, and the open source definition which made it possible for HashiCorp or MongoDB to actually get where they are right now. So is it really fair as a request to just leave this intact and leave people alone with their choices and what they think about open source?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hacking Open Source Business Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Matt Yankovic, joined this week again by co-host Avi Press. And this week we have a special guest, Peter Farkas. Peter, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good
Thanks
to have you
for
on.
Inviting me.
Yes, Peter and I go way back several years, so known each other for a long time. And Peter is now over at FerretDB. So, Peter, maybe just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and tell us how you came to FerretDB.
Okay. Yes, I'm a co-founder and CEO of FerretDB. We founded the company with Alexei Palaschenko and Peter Zaitsev around 1.5 years ago. On my background, I've been working around open source databases, big data for the past 15 years now. Matt, I think we met at Percona 13 years ago or something like that, or 10?
Yeah.
12, actually. Yeah, so we go way back. So I worked at Percona, worked at Cloudera, worked at several other smaller companies, and whenever I felt good about what I'm doing, I was always close to open source. So that's how I ended up in open source, I guess, for life. And how FerretDB came to exist is that in 2018, MongoDB decided to adopt the SSPL license, and they made claims that this is the same as any other open source license. They claimed that this is actually the new open source. And back then I was at Cloudera, so I was watching this whole thing unfold from the sidelines a bit, but I thought that, okay, it's just a matter of weeks and someone is going to come up with an alternative. Someone is going to fork MongoDB or do whatever with MongoDB just to keep it open source. And to my surprise, this is not what happened. So there were some alternatives popping up, like Amazon's DocumentDB, or later Microsoft's Cosmos DB also became MongoDB compatible. But there is no open source alternative. There is no fork. There is no viable open source alternative which would not be tied to one single vendor or one single cloud service. So in 2021, with Alexei Palaschenko and Peter Zaitsev, we figured that it's time. We actually went to this epic journey to the base camp of K2 in the Himalayas. And, you know, this takes weeks to go there and get back from there optimally. And you know, after a while, you run out of topics. And that's when we started talking about MongoDB.
So wait. So realistically, you're on the side of a mountain, and you're like, "What do you want to talk about?" I don't know. You know, why don't we talk about MongoDB? Just
well, I mean, first you talk about family and about memories from Percona and the mountains and whatever. But after a while, you know, we've been sleeping in this tent on the glacier itself. And, you know, you have no internet, no electricity, no nothing. It's a very nomad experience. And yeah, that's how we ended up talking about FerretDB, how there's, we were called MangoDB, by the way. So not FerretDB back then. But that's when we came up with the idea that probably it's time to come up with an open source alternative to MongoDB. And, you know, the special thing about the idea is that many would approach, you know, just rewriting the whole thing from the ground up. But, you know, that takes 10 years or so with a database until people start trusting the thing. Look at what happens with MySQL or Postgres, where it took a lot of time for them to become what they are. And we decided to do something different. We decided to build the whole thing powered by Postgres. So FerretDB is a MongoDB compatible document database built on Postgres, as we are using Postgres as our database backend.
So a couple things on that. So, you know, real quick here, you know, like choosing Postgres. Why Postgres?
So one important thing about open source databases is that you want to choose a product with a good community around it. So if you choose a database, you obviously get into something which optimally you will not be able to get away from for a while. And so we made our choice based on our understanding that, first of all, Postgres already offers some degree of compatibility with document database workloads. And second, the community around it is just awesome and unmatched in the open source database arena. And from the very start to, you know, to even these days, we are getting a lot of help from the Postgres community and vendors around Postgres on overcoming some obstacles we are finding in our way to build compatibility. So that's why Postgres.
One thing that I'm curious about, so when you're you know, seeing the fact that, okay, Mongo has switched licenses, we're waiting around for maybe there's going to be like a fork or an alternative, and no one shows up. And so you're assessing, maybe we should be the one to do this. I'm kind of curious, how did you assess, like, why was there no fork? Why didn't the community kind of shift and land towards another one? Like, how are you thinking through that, and what conclusion did you come to that made you land on, well, let's do it ourselves?
So I would not tell you the truth if I would say that we started this whole thing with a full understanding of, you know, what the implications are on users. We had some ideas about it. So, for example, we know about the SSPL, the SSPL license, that it prohibits a service provider to provide MongoDB as a service. That means that there is decreased competition on the market, which means that the user is going to have to pay more for the same service compared to if there would be competition providing MongoDB as a service. So we already understood that there are these basic implications tied to the SSPL license, and this is what we use to come up with FerretDB as a solution. Actually, we did not plan with starting a company around it, at least not that early. But when we published our first tech demo around 2021, August, September-ish, it just blew up, and we were all around, Hacker News, and a lot of blogs wrote about MongoDB, as what was called back then. And that's when we started getting hard feedback on what the actual problems our users are facing. So one example here, we were not sure if enterprise companies even care. And the second day we became public on GitHub with our repo, a huge enterprise company, big hardware manufacturer approached us, or hardware and software manufacturer approached us saying, hey, we are the largest users of MongoDB in the world, in our understanding, and we want to get away from this vendor lock-in situation. And that's when we realized that small users, SMBs, and even enterprise companies are affected by SSPL and are affected by the vendor lock-in, and they don't like it. So that's when we decided to actually start the company and renamed it FerretDB to comply with the trademark regulations and all that, right?
The one letter difference wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're too strict, right? But no, actually, yes. So MongoDB was just we ate a lot of mangoes in Pakistan, in the Himalayas. That's why.
Oh, it works on multiple levels.
That was the background story. So it was not just because of MongoDB, but also MongoDB is actually coming from the word humongous, not mango. So there's a very complicated story around naming here.
So can you confirm or deny that really this was all about a spirit vision quest while you were on the mountain, that you all had a vision, like a shared vision from the cold and, deprivation of certain foods?
So, yes, I can confirm. I can confirm that that was actually the case. We just didn't like where this is headed, because having SSPL aside, the big problem is not with MongoDB and the software itself and how it is licensed. The problem is that MongoDB Inc. tried to redefine open source with this move, saying open source is just, outdated because we couldn't monetize our software at the level we wanted it to be monetized. And that was what FerretDB was about in the early days, to see if we can challenge this and come up with an alternative as part of the open source community.
All right, so Avi, you had asked something that was a little interesting and nuanced, and I wanted to get back to it. When we look at, other projects that have switched licenses like Elastic, there was quickly a fork of that with OpenSearch. Similarly, and we'll talk a little bit about Hashi. There's already talk about a Hashi split and fork as well. I've seen some work on that early on, and we've seen that happen, right? Why not with Mongo? And where Mongo is a little unique is Mongo never really started down that contribution and that, really big contributor base. And they've been on the record saying that they did not open source specifically for contributions or for help or for the classic kind of open source plays. They did it purely as a freemium strategy, which means that they weren't really focused on cultivating that contributor type environment. So when we talk about switching licenses, there probably weren't as many people who were contributing to the core who would be willing to do a fork or have the knowledge to do a fork. But also I think they've done an excellent job at focusing on the code and the infrastructure doesn't matter, preaching to developers to just spin up their stuff and then just forget about it. And I think that's what I've seen. Peter, I'm interested in your take on that.
I think you're right, Matt. And what I was trying to say with when answering Avi's question is that the SSPL license, the PR around it did a great job with making it look like that this is not going to affect users. So I believe that when MongoDB came up with this idea and they submitted SSPL to the OSI as a new open source license, they did a great job with explaining that, hey, unless you're Amazon or Azure or whoever else, you're not affected by this whole thing. And this is actually what they are maintaining to this day. But what you're saying, Matt, is also true. We did not come across a lot of MongoDB contributors. There are some. So I've seen, of course, MongoDB contributors, but of course, nowhere near to what a healthy open source project would call for. And what you're referring to, Matt, their claim that they used open source as a freemium strategy, yes, this was, I think, confirmed by their CEO,
Yeah.
where he said that MongoDB is basically built by MongoDB, and they do whatever with it. They are not really concerned about the community as it is, because there's none.
I feel like I've learned this kind of same lesson in many different contexts and flavors when it comes to building a business. That's just really all about managing people's expectations. If you're Mongo and you've set those expectations from the very beginning that like, this is what we're doing, we own this, we're going to do whatever we want with this. And if you decide to go make that change, certainly people are not going to necessarily like the SSPL for all the reasons that you're describing, but people aren't as surprised by it. And so the uproar is not quite the same as if you are Elastic and kind of people have, felt like they had misaligned expectations to what ended up actually happening. And I think it's just very important. Even internally running a business, like managing people's expectations, very important.
Yeah. I think Elastic had 2,600 contributors when they switched licenses, and that's a lot of people who were like, wait a minute, what's happening with all my contributions? And so you mentioned something really interesting, Peter, was, this concept of kind of like, I've heard it called open washing, but I've heard it, kind of like the hijacking of the term open source. And this is where it's kind of interesting because, when you think about open source, a lot of this is focused on like, these new licenses still give you access to the code. But I found that a very small percentage of users actually go to the code level for most of their stuff. They're running it because they find it, freely available, because there is a community behind it, because there is some promise of, openness. The code for a lot of users is really secondary or even tertiary.
I feel the same way. The code is just there, just in case. It builds trust, right? If you would want to, you would be able to look at the code responsible for providing telemetry data, and you could verify that this software is not going to be a security issue for you. So definitely, that's really the case. The code is not as important. I think I'm good with empathizing with a lot of different users using open source software, but what works best for me is to think back what my relationship looks like with open source. And I distinctly remember I was around 14 years old when, with my friend Tomasz, you know him, Matt.
Oh, yes.
He also worked at Percona. We actually started a business because we were really bored in high school, and we started this web hosting and application hosting service in Hungary. And we had bare metal servers in a data center. This was before the cloud or before any of this. We had 100 megabit connection in the data center, which sounded like, wow, like
Not to age you, but what year is this?
It was 2006-ish,
Okay.
around that, 4, I don't know, probably 6. And I remember that we were not conscious about open source when we were using a lot of open source software. We used Linux, we used web servers, we used stuff for monitoring, we used everything we could for free. Otherwise, our business wouldn't have been viable. I mean, we were 14 years old, for God's sake. So it was not like a business which, would redefine the industry. But still, just the thought that doing all of this with the need to actually start thinking about what are the 10 companies we would start having to pay license fees to buy Microsoft Windows licenses or Windows Server, I don't know, 2003 or if we use a database like MongoDB, whether we are legal to do so or not. I mean, with open source, these questions are quite clear. It's in the license, it's established, you understand what you're doing, and if there's a question, there will be someone who can answer. With the SSPL license, it's completely unclear what is allowed and what is not allowed. It's basically a legal text which very broadly explains that if you have anything to do with MongoDB and the service associated with it, then you may need to pay a license. I believe that the beauty of open source is that there's a very clear definition, a very clear license behind it, a community around it which is able to answer your questions if you're in doubt about all of these things. And this is something which, I hope that if we are able to preserve open source, if we are able to keep corporations from redefining open source according to their own needs at the time, then we can have 14-year-olds today who will not have to think along the lines of, cloud credits and license fees and all that to build their own first companies or first software or first whatever. This is what I'm most concerned about, innovation and how if a generation after us will not even understand what open source is because of these voices saying open source is outdated and trying to frame their licenses as exactly the same thing, but actually not.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point because a lot of these licenses have a lot of left open to interpretation, right? And in fact, the first version I remember of the SSPL, actually, if you read it, it disallowed even like consulting services, right? And
Oh, really?
oh yeah, it was like any services around this, and then people were like, wait a minute, we do consulting, does that count? Oh well, no. And so then they kind of backed off on it a little bit and made some changes. And I think that's where it's interesting because it's less of a license and more almost like a terms of service, and more open to interpretation. And I think it's a little scary because I'm going to date myself, not like take myself on a date for pizza, but date myself in terms of how old I am. It's definitely something that I've seen back in the day when I started where, the GPL is evil and it's so open-ended, we don't know what it means. And so all of these big corporations would have lawyers and lawyers and lawyers telling you can't use GPL simply because it's a scary thing. Because there was a lot of, potential ambiguity. And over time, there became kind of this standard that everybody kind of fell into. But with these licenses, whether it's BSL, SSPL, there's a lot of open to interpretation, which means that the companies using these, they can redefine those terms based on who's in charge management-wise.
I would say the GPL is that way too, though, right? Like we're still learning new ways the GPL is being applied.
But there's so many people who are
now.
using it, and there's so much in common usage. I don't think you could.
That's
you know,
what
like-
Red Hat recently did. Like people were like, "Wait, is that really GPL?"
Well, and there's a
compliant?
lot
Like,
of,
oh,
like-
news to us, right? We don't have the lawyers.
But that's a lot of pushback already. Like the whole thing, you know, we were at Fosse not too long ago, and they were arguing about that, right? There was the whole session. I think it's even on YouTube now.
I guess all I'm saying is like if we're going to criticize these licenses for being vague and like kind of difficult to understand, I think we can look at specific open source licenses and make the exact same critiques.
I don't know. I mean, I think there are.
Do you understand the AGPL in and out? Do you really feel like you like?
Well,
totally
AGPL is
walk
a
all the
weird
way-
thing
like,
in and of itself.
yeah,
and
but-
here's Peter just looking at us like bouncing back and forth between like this tennis match.
I think you're right, Avi. So I'm not saying that everything is fine with how, you know, I mean, there's a lot of license war going on in open source. I mean, that's like
What's new,
given.
right? Yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, let's look at HashiCorp, for example.
Yes.
So how I think about the current situation is that there was a company which was really, really successful with open source. It was one of the most successful open source companies out there, and a lot of people started using it, and there was a huge, healthy community around their projects. And then they had a growth. I'm guessing that this is what happened. HashiCorp had investors on board, and they came up with a growth trajectory which couldn't be met with open source and the monetization, available monetization strategies around them. And so they adopted BSL, which is not an open source license. And in the article, they claim that open source actually needs some kind of an update in terms of what the license allows and how monetization looks like. Because what? Because your growth trajectory was too steep for open source, and now open source is to blame. This is what, you know, is happening here, that open source as a software license you use to publish software is not good enough for your business plan, and therefore you need to change open source. No, I mean, you need to change either your projections, your ambitions in terms of growth, or you know, look elsewhere. But it was not open source you had a problem with in the first place, and this is what was going on with MongoDB as well, and we are seeing it over and over again, where somehow a very steeply forecasted growth trajectory is something which open source can deliver to you as a company, and therefore they try to redefine the exact vehicle which actually took them to where they are in the first place. And the only problem they are having is that it no longer serves their needs in terms of growth. So they come up with BSL, and they come up with SSPL and all these licenses, which, if they would have a choice, of course, it would be called an open source license. It was attempted with SSPL. It's attempted with BSL as well. I think MariaDB called it open source, or the same thing as, you know, open source. But in reality, these licenses, contrary to AGPL and all the open source licenses we are having you know, discussions about, these licenses are not they did not come up with them with the community in mind. They came up with them with fixing their business models in mind, and I think that's a very big difference.
Yeah, it's a good point, because when you look at like an SSPL or a BSL, it is exclusionary. And Avi, you like to point out the AGPL. AGPL is not exclusionary.
It's restrictive,
AGPL
though.
It's restrictive only based on the people who are, using it as their license or deploying it. Because what it's saying is, if it's connected to the network, then you should also open source those network protocols.
Right, but that is a restriction in how you can use it, and so I think
But hold on, let me finish my thought.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're getting ahead of my thought here.
Okay.
My thought in my comment here is when you look at an SSPL or a BSL, it exclusively says these people cannot use it, or you cannot use it for these types of things.
Yeah.
The AGPL doesn't say that. The AGPL basically says we want everything to be open source. And you might say as a company, oh, I don't want my proprietary stuff open source, so then you would choose not to use it.
Right.
But it's a nuance where one is we're protecting ourselves from these other people, and then the other one is we want everybody who uses this to use open source.
I mean, you could
I think
rephrase that same thing to say we're protecting ourselves from people who would put this in proprietary software.
but it's still it's the difference between
The exact same
perpetuating
thing.
open source versus preventing people from using your things in a more discriminatory way.
I.e., not open source.
Yeah, which
So it's
is
the
what
same thing.
SSPL and BSL are.
That's the same thing.
By the way, Peter, if you didn't know, Avi and I are on a little bit of a
Long
different.
I'm,
You know-
yeah, I'm starting to feel that there is a full-blown licensing war going on in this podcast episode, but
Yeah, we keep it interesting here that way.
AGPL still complies with the open source definition, right? I mean, at least we can say that this is what Matt is saying, that it's not going to exclude any sort of use case or user. And these other licenses like BSL or SSPL, they don't comply with this definition, and therefore they are not open source. Our whole point at FerretDB, or my personal opinion, or maybe both, is that you are free to say that open source is not good for you. You are free to publish your software with a proprietary license. You are free to do whatever you need to do as a company to achieve your goals. Just try not to reach back and redefine things according to your own needs, according to what you want to see as an individual or as a business. It's open source, and the open source definition which made it possible for HashiCorp or MongoDB to actually get where they are right now. So is it really fair as a request to just leave this intact and leave people alone with their choices and what they think about open source, rather than trying to show down something beneficial to their business on other people's throats?
Fair enough.
Do you feel like there's a meaningful difference between the move that HashiCorp took and the move that MongoDB took? Do you see those as kind of, I don't know, like equally bad for communities or equally bad for ecosystems? Like, if there is a difference, what do you see those as being?
Well, I think, Matt, you made a good point with the difference between the communities. So MongoDB and HashiCorp's projects are not even comparable as to the number of contributors or the community around them, or actually the number of companies who are affected by HashiCorp's decision. I think HashiCorp is a lot worse in terms of the effect on the community. At the same time, what MongoDB... So I'm not sure if HashiCorp made any attempt to redefine open source. I don't think they did. If I remember... Yeah, they had some comments where they said, yeah, open source, I mean, we may need to think about the future of open source or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it was not like, hey, there is this BSL license, it's as good as open source, let's call it open source, let's call this a day. You are not affected, why do you even care? I mean, this is what MongoDB did. And I think for the broader community, what MongoDB did is, I guess if I would need to compare the two, what MongoDB did is bad for the broader community and open source itself, because they wanted to redefine open source, and even to this day many people think that SSPL is open source. I'm dealing with that every day. HashiCorp, on the other hand, I think that's bad for their own communities or the open source communities around the company itself. But when it comes to the broader open source community, I don't think it had a lot of effect.
Fair enough. Why don't we switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about FerretDB? And, as we like to talk here on the Hacking Open Source Business podcast, all about business and, how things are set up to educate other people in this field looking to build their own open source startups or accelerate their own open source, businesses. How has adoption been going since you hit version 1?
So we we were working with our heads down till April this year when we released version 1.0. Before version
Congrats.
1.0, it was not a lot of action in terms of actual adoption. So there were interested people in FerretDB, and from 0.8 they were thinking about trying it out and evaluating, but compatibility issues kill, your ability to actually keep evaluating the product for a long while. So starting 1.0, we got to the point where we have enough compatibility with the MongoDB wire protocol that we are actually able to run real world workloads. So we are seeing a lot more running instances. Those who, of course, choose to allow to run telemetry. I think we have more than 600 instances running with telemetry on. We are getting a lot of valuable data, all of the error messages, all of the unsupported comments, and this is how we are coming up with our roadmap. But what's more important is that service providers who are naturally impacted by SSPL, because SSPL is mainly against them, since 1.0, they are also heavily looking into making it part of their database as a service offering. I could mention Civo, where we are available on the Civo marketplace, and there are other cloud providers who I can't talk about at this point, who are very heavily working on integrating FerretDB into their as a service offerings, because now they can do it. Now they don't have to sit down with MongoDB Inc. and figure out the price anymore.
So I'm curious, version 1 is always the most difficult version to get to because there's some gravitas with a version 1, right? Like
Commitment.
that we've reached a point where we would say this is ready to run in production. What sort of criteria goes into that from your perspective? Like, are there certain things you're looking for in terms of a checklist, or we need to hit these milestones before we're going to hit version 1?
That's a very good question, and I can only answer this. In hindsight, I think we could have released 1.0 much earlier than we did. And this is the classic thing of, hey, let's build something which is useful, but then you need to define useful, and your definition of useful may be very different as to what your users would think is useful for them. So, for example, when we hit 0.07, I think, we learned about someone, or actually multiple people, who were already using FerretDB sort of in production for their own smaller projects. And then we were looking at each other like, how is this even possible? We are still not ready with feature X, Y, and Z, and they are already using the product without those features. And that's when we realized that our standards were probably a bit higher than what really would have made sense to the average user. So our criteria was to make sure we can run actual MongoDB applications, like if you take MongoDB Compass, which is MongoDB's own UI to manage a MongoDB database, we wanted all features to work on MongoDB Compass, like the number of, I don't know, the statistics, like how many collections you have in the database and so on and so on. It turned out that no one cares, right? So we could have released 1.0 with much less features than what we ended up with. And I think that's a good learning point. If I would start it all over again, I would probably release 1.0 much earlier. And it doesn't matter what features you have in 1.0. I mean, if I remember correctly, 15 years ago, 1.0 meant something you can't use. Like you've seen 1.0 on a floppy disk or a CD or whatever, you're like, yeah, they came out with something and that's probably not going to, be good for, a couple months or years from now. MySQL 1.0, Matt.
Oh yeah, yeah. No. But you just, I laugh because you just dated yourself with the floppy disk reference in the 1.0. I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I haven't used MySQL 1.0 though, so I don't remember. What I've heard.
Oh, it really wasn't even a version that anybody used. It wasn't until 3 that it was.
3, yeah, exactly. So when it comes to FerretDB, and back to your question, I think I need to agree with those who say, hey, just release it, name it 1.0, name it whatever you want to name it, and
except mango.
except mango and certain fruits. But I think if I would talk to my myself, 1.5 years ago, I think I would have say something along the lines of, yeah, let's just release, much earlier and then get feedback. And this is actually 101. Like you read some book about this, or ask whoever, Peter Zaitsev was on my neck saying, hey, just release it. I was like, with Alexei, we were like, yeah, but we are not quite ready. Well, we should have released it, and I would definitely.
Shipping is the most important feature.
I'm a big proponent of that too. Yeah.
But it's harder to execute than you think. I guess.
Very much so. It's tough to. I mean, yeah. I think there's the classic, like, you should be embarrassed of the first thing you ship, that kind of thing. Like people go a little overboard with that philosophy sometimes. I think there's a lot of truth to it as well.
Yeah.
I do want to dig. One thing that I think is very interesting about getting a database, project off the ground, and similar for a lot of other infrastructure things, is just that it's so critical to the application that it requires a good deal of trust to take a bet on to bet on a new piece of infra like that. It's amazing that people were relying on this before you even said, hey, this is something that you can use. So there were some people that were down to just try it and see what happens. But when it comes to a more mission critical application, I don't know if you're already in those kinds of things in production, but what do you think what were the critical choices that you made that led to people having that trust so early in a new database? How do you build that trust early on?
So when we learned that some people are using FerretDB at 0.7, I was sitting at, I think, in San Francisco airport, and I was looking at my Twitter app, and that's where I have FerretDB as well, the company account, and people started tweeting in French about how FerretDB solved some of their problems and how awesome it is. It's like, you did what? You replaced MongoDB with what? This is what my first reaction was. And later on we talked to some of these users, and early adopters are early adopters. You can rely on them. They are going to be there. If your product has any meaningful, solutions to real world problems, then there will be early adopters who will, buy iPhone 1 or, buy a Tesla in 2010 or, start using MySQL 2.0. I mean, maybe these are not the best examples, but you get it. Same thing with software. Same thing with stuff. There is a very good website analytics software, an alternative to Google Analytics, which is bloated, unusable at this point. I mean, Google Analytics, plausible. There were no features in it. It was like 4 numbers on a page, but those were important numbers. So, is it better than Google Analytics? If you compare the features, or maybe if you compare the reliability or the dry facts, maybe it was not better. But for your use case or as an early adopter, it made a lot of sense. Or it made a lot of sense for me. So I think trust is being built by early adopters trying out the product and you doing something with their feedback. So if they see that, hey, FerretDB just crashed 5 times while I was trying to do XYZ, we earned some of these users' trust by addressing the problem right away. And, the next day or 2 hours later, they had a fix and we were able to solve that problem. So if early adopters see that you are listening to them and you are building the product with them, then I think trust is going to be there. And also, if we take the example of Plausible, or if we take the example of FerretDB versus MongoDB, if you are not delusional, we know that, I don't know, a credit card company is not going to adopt FerretDB tomorrow, even though they were interested. So, I mean, they are interested, but of course, if I would be them, I would not do that, simply because we need to iron out wrinkles here. But just keeping in contact with those who are not yet ready to adopt your product is also going to build trust on the long run, even before you can deliver to them.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've had a similar experience, which is, it's always jarring when people are using stuff you're not expecting it. Yeah. Peter, do you remember Waffle Grid, the project that Yves Trudeau and I built?
Yeah.
I remember. We built this project. It was a distributed level 2 cache directly in the database. It plugged into databases, so as databases got moved out of cache, it would move to basically a Memcache instance. And we did it as this, like, oh, this would be cool. And so we threw up code, and we were at a conference talking about it, and someone raises their hand and goes, oh, yeah, I've been running this in production, and it's causing these issues.
Oh,
and,
no.
And we're like, this isn't even alpha code. Yeah. We actually hired that guy. I don't know if you remember who that was, Peter. Do you remember? You remember who that was?
No.
That was Kenny Grip.
Oh, Kenny. Wow. Yeah. Kenny. Yeah. I can see Kenny being an early adopter on
Yeah. I tried this in production. It didn't work. Yeah. Not good. So you want to avoid that. But we only have a few more minutes. So I wanted to wrap up with our favorite, rapid fire questions to give Peter an opportunity to throw out some knowledge on all of us and get to know him a little bit more. So, you have traveled all over the world. You mentioned that you were at, base camp there. What's your favorite location? Like, where was the favorite place that you've ever been?
Uruguay, Montevideo.
Oh, yes, just because you can eat barbecue. You got some good food from the team down there.
Great people, great, beaches. Yeah, that was the best.
Weirdest food you've ever eaten on one of your travels?
Oh, I love this question.
Wow, Uruguay is going to come up very often, I guess. That was the saliva gland of cow in Uruguay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
I only learned after the fact. Yeah.
And did you like it?
No.
No. Okay. Fair enough. So when you are not working, what are you doing nowadays?
I'm mainly fiddling around with home automation. I think that saves you a lot of time. I think that's kind of the future. So yeah, I'm enjoying that.
All right. Favorite open source tool?
Favorite open source tool? Well, I could say Home Assistant. Tying this to the previous question, I think that's like amazing how it bridges a lot of proprietary stuff into something open source. Home Assistant is great. Yeah.
So you're at a conference, you're talking at the conference, and they ask you what music to play when you walk up to the stage. What is it? We're building a playlist here.
For dramatic effect, I don't know. Honestly,
You gotta pick something.
I'm a weird.
This is the hardest question we ask.
I'm a weirdo. I don't listen to music. So if
You
you want to
wouldn't
learn
pick
something
anything?
about me,
Like, 1812 Overture or classical, or pick a genre. Like, do you want rap? What do you want?
rap would be the funniest, I would say. Like walking towards the stage with like the weirdest, hardest music you can get your hands on. I think that's at least a good comedy effect, I would say.
I like it.
Now, last question. You mentioned Tomasz. Do you remember the first time that me, and Tomasz met?
Hotel Perkona.
Hotel Perkona, yes.
When
I feel like it's story time.
When Pete, there was this house Perkona rented where new Perkona team members could meet. And that's where we met as well. We were sleeping in the same house, sometimes in the same bedroom, sometimes in the same bed. It was a very, 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 very interesting experience. And then there was this ritual which Peter had where he invited everyone to his house and invited everyone to his basement. You remember, Matt? And then we didn't know what is going to happen, and then apparently he had a photo studio in the basement, so everyone could do a funny profile picture for the company website, or I don't know, like with flamingos and interesting glasses and hats and all that. That was right your alley, Matt. I think like you had a lot of fun with that.
Yes. All right. Well, Peter, thanks for dropping some knowledge on us, sharing your opinions. We do appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's been great.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right. Everybody, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us. Don't forget to check out FairDB. Give it a star on GitHub. I'm sure that Peter and the team would appreciate that as well.
I'm going to star it right now.
Oh, look, Avi's starring it right now.
It works,
there you
Matt.
go.
It works.
There you go.
Wow.
Yes. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and until next time, we'll see you later.